Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 98 based on novel. So let's start. In the void, looking at the thunder leopard leaving quickly, Xiao Yang's face showed a slight smile, raised his hand and looked at a red inflammatory crystal in the palm of his hand, and his eyes couldn't help showing a satisfied look. Put it into Naji. Xiao Yang turned and wanted to fly to the deeper part of Shaolin mountain range. Master. Just as Xiao Yang turned around, a group of people came quickly not far away. It was Ji Shuyi and others. Oh, what's up? Xiao Yang raised his eyebrows and asked the several people who flew in. Hehe, the elder misunderstood. How dare the younger generation and others bother the elder again? We just want to thank the elder for saving his life. Today, if the elder didn't help in time, I'm afraid it would be impossible for the younger generation and others to recover their life. When they came near, they really saw Xiao Yang's appearance. They stood a few feet away from Xiao Yang and bowed their hands to Xiao Yang to show their gratitude to Xiao Yang. Only Shueya, who supported Uncle Ge with both hands, blushed on his pretty face. A pair of beautiful eyes stared at Xiao Yang, but there was no movement in his eyes. When Uncle Ge saw this, his pale face could not help but change slightly. He was very clear about the girl. At the moment, he had a panoramic view of Shueya's pretty face. Seeing this scene, Uncle Ge had to sigh helplessly at the bottom of his heart, carefully glanced at Xiao Yang, and found that the latter didn't care. Then he hurried to shout softly in the dark, and Shueya woke up from his absence. At the moment of regaining consciousness, the blush on Shueya's pretty face was like being drunk. When people saw Xiao Yang's eyes, Shueya quickly lowered his head and said to Xiao Yang's delicate and respectful tone, "Junior Shueya, thank you for your help." While talking, Shueya didn't forget to take a peek at Xiao Yang's eyes. This scene was naturally seen by Xiao Yang, and some idea in his eyes was also understood by Xiao Yang. At that time, Xiao Yang could not help but get his old face red. In his secret way, he would only occasionally save his heart and help others. Alas! Personality charm is really a terrible thing. It seems that saving people will have to see again in the future. Xiao Yang said in a low voice. What's the matter with you, senior? Is there anything you want the younger generation to do? If so, please don't hesitate to speak. The younger generation will do their best. Hearing the whisper in Xiao Yang's mouth, Uncle Ge's pale face suddenly perked up, raised his head, looked at Xiao Yang, and asked respectfully in his mouth. No, it's okay. Now that it's okay, you should leave here quickly. With the strength of your team, you can't stay here. You'd better go to the periphery of Shaolin mountain range. Hearing Uncle Ge's words, Xiao Yang took back his mind with an embarrassed face. An old face slowly returned to normal. He said to several people in front of him. As soon as he turned around, he wanted to leave. Seeing Xiao Yang leaving without turning back, Shueya's pretty face changed slightly, and his red lips opened gently, but he didn't speak until Xiao Yang flew away to a distance of 100 feet. Shueya summoned up his courage and asked Xiao Yang loudly. Elder saved Shueya. Can you leave your name? Xiao Yang, who was flying, gave a little pause. He raised his eyes and looked at the mountains in the distance. The brilliance of the hot sun was like sands, which made Xiao Yang squint his eyes. Hiss. Suddenly, Xiao Yang waved his big hand, and the broad black giant ruler appeared in Xiao Yang's hand again. His palm twisted on the handle of the ruler and carried the heavy ruler behind his back. At the same time, the clear voice of words resounded through the world like a clear thunder. Xiao Yang. The words came out, Xiao Yang's feet moved, and Tianjua's step came out in an instant. With a gust of breeze blowing across the world, Xiao Yang's figure had disappeared in the sky. Xiao Yang. Shueya read it low in his mouth, while Uncle Ge on his side and the people behind him changed his face at the moment of hearing Xiao Yang's name. Xiao Yang, he is Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang, who is jointly wanted by the four major sect. Unexpectedly, he came here. Look at his direction. He's going to the depths of the Shaolin mountains. Only there is the place where the four main doors are difficult to reach. Who? Uncle Ge was pale and exhaled deeply. Then he took away Shueya, held his jade hand, turned around, looked solemnly at the people behind him, and said in a deep voice. Brothers, after leaving here today, I hope you can forget. You should never see him. Everyone knows what I mean. Everyone immediately nodded. Seeing this, Uncle Ge also nodded solemnly. He immediately looked at Shueya, who was stunned in the direction Xiao Yang left. He sighed helplessly, grabbed Shueya's wrist, and took a group of people to quickly retreat outside the Shaolin Mountains. In the twinkling of an eye, time has come, night, another day, quietly flowing through the boring road. Looking at the completely dark night sky, Xiao Yang, who was flying, also fell down again, fell to the top of a mountain, and crossed his legs to practice. After a long time, when Xiao Yang opened his eyes again, he saw a brilliant flash of fire in his eyes. Xiao Yang's breath also returned to the peak again. When the palm of Xiao Yang's hand turned over, a fiery red flame crystal stood out in the palm of Xiao Yang's hand. This is the one obtained from Lei Bao during the day. Of course, in order to get this flame crystal, Xiao Yang had to give up 2 imperial pills, but it was also worth it for Xiao Yang. With a deep breath, Xiao Yang put Yangjing between his hands, his eyes closed slightly, and the vast and terrible soul force poured out at this moment and began to engrave Yangjing in his hands. With the experience of the previous 3 times and the soul power of Xiao Yang now, the process of engraving is much faster than that of the previous times. Even the steps of condensing the avatar. This time, Xiao Yang also finished at one go, but in a few hours, another avatar appeared in front of Xiao Yang. Looking at the slightly illusory avatar in front of him, Xiao Yang nodded slightly. Although the strength of this avatar is only 9-star Dual Saint at this time, it is much stronger than when the first 3 avatars just condensed out. This may also be due to the improvement of Xiao Yang's strength, but anyway, this avatar finally condenses another one. In this way, as long as we can find 2 more inflammatory crystals, the strength of this avatar can be improved again. Combining 3 into 1, Xiao Yang can have an incarnation of no less than half Emperor, which is not a small help for Xiao Yang. After all, once the avatar explodes, even the semi-Emperor strong can't easily ignore it. If the strength of the avatar is further improved in the future, I'm afraid even the real Emperor strong will be afraid of it. With longing in mind, Xiao Yang exhaled lightly and wanted to cross his legs to enter the cultivation state again. However, at the moment when Xiao Yang just closed his eyes, a strong attraction suddenly came out of Xiao Yang's body. Between heaven and earth, strands of visible energy from heaven and earth quickly gathered towards Xiao Yang, which changed Xiao Yang's look. What's going on? Aware of the abnormality in his body, Xiao Yang was surprised and looked inside quickly, but he found that his cyclone had not changed, and the source of the suction was not his body. Xiao Yang frowned. Since the suction didn't come from him, where did it come from? Moreover, according to this situation, it is clearly the omen before the cultivation breakthrough. Poof! Suddenly, Xiao Yang's face suddenly changed. In the center of his cyclone, a pink flame suddenly rushed out of Xiao Yang's body and turned into a human shadow on the void. It's really Huri. Huri slept in Xiao Yang's body for several years. Now she wakes up again. It's finally time to break through the half-emperor. Returning to his mind, Xiao Yang suddenly looked up, looked at Huri with a happy face, and laughed. Ha ha, Hui, are you finally going to break through? That's great. Hearing the speech, Huri on the void slowly lowered his eyes and looked at Xiao Yang. However, at the moment when they looked at each other, Xiao Yang couldn't help frowning slightly. From that moment just now, he saw an indifferent look in Huri's eyes. Hui. Pure lotus demon fire. Return. Xiao Yang's mouth was full of suspicious whispers, but Huri in the sky suddenly drank and waved his hand. Xiao Yang's body trembled violently below. Then, a pink fire was forcibly separated from the cyclone in Xiao Yang's body, flew out of Xiao Yang's body and returned to Huri's body in an instant. The connection with Jinglian demon fire was cut off, and there was a sharp pain in Xiao Yang's mind. However, when he wanted to struggle, Xiao Yang was suddenly hit hard at the back of his neck. The next moment, Xiao Yang lost consciousness and fainted. At the moment Xiao Yang lay down, Jiu Yu's figure appeared behind Xiao Yang, held the latter, and then slowly flattened it. Then he got up and looked up at Huri in the sky, saying, "You're finally going to break through, so it's time for you to leave. The time has come. Naturally, it is the time for me to leave." Huri's tone was indifferent, and there was no emotional change on his face. He looked at the bone Yu standing beside Xiao Yang quietly below, and said, Sure enough, when that guy broke through, I thought of you the second time. Unexpectedly, it's true." Hearing the speech, Jiu Yu snorted, and the corners of his mouth flashed a radian. It was obvious that he was quite satisfied with his judgment. Huri was indifferent to this. He just paused on Xiao Yang with his indifferent eyes, and then said to Guyo, "Next, he'll give it to you. Hihi, please don't. You should know that I haven't existed for a long time. I originally planned to delay for a while. However, since even you have to leave now, there's no point in delaying. I'll tell him when you leave. Jiu smiled and couldn't help showing some complex color in his old eyes. Anyway, thank you all the way. If it weren't for you, he wouldn't be here. The expression on Hori's indifferent face finally moved slightly, and the tone of speech in his mouth also became a lot more peaceful. Hey, there's nothing to thank you for. I'm just responsible. It's you. Since you're about to break through, you still show this appearance. It's cold, but it's not consistent with the past. Boom. Just as the words fell in the Bonyu's mouth, the thunder clouds suddenly rolled over the sky, covering the whole sky. After a while, the heaven and earth became dark, as if night came. With the rolling of thunderclouds, terrible thunder fell from the sky between heaven and earth, making the world tremble. Under this terrible thunder, I'm afraid even the 9-star and half-emperor can't live for a moment. However, this is the strength that Hori has to bear when he breaks through at the moment. Oh, come on, let me see how many kilograms you have. Boom. The cold laughter fell from Hori's mouth. On the horizon, the rolling thunder cloud suddenly became angry and thundered. Then I only saw that the world was shrouded in a dazzling silver light. Then, a terrible thunder like a dragon suddenly fell from the thundercloud and roared at Hori below. Although his tone was tough, Hori didn't dare to be careless in the face of the thunder with his strength at the moment. While dodging left and right, his hands also quickly formed a seal. At the moment when the thunder fell, the seal in Hori's palm was also condensed, and one palm was severely hit with the thunder. Boom, boom, boom. Between heaven and earth, the thunder continued, roared, and shook the sky. The whole heaven and earth seemed to be afraid of the power of heaven and earth. The Hori in the sky became more and more fanatical. In the face of countless bombardments of the thunder, he was not defeated. On the contrary, his power was more and more powerful. In the twinkling of an eye, such a capricious bombardment has lasted for 3 days. Broken. A startling scream fell, and on the horizon, Hori punched the thunderbolt again. Punch, thunder. Until this time, the world still echoed the words just spit out from Hori's mouth. When the thunder was broken, Hori stepped on the void fiercely. When the thunder cloud rolled, he rushed into it. After several rumbling sounds, the thunder cloud that rolled for 3 days and nights finally dispersed gradually. Buzzing. However, when the thunder clouds disperse, it doesn't seem to mean the end of everything. On the contrary, a more terrible breath quietly shrouds the world while the thunder clouds disperse. Is it your turn at last? This day, I should have come to the meeting for a while, but I don't want to. It has been delayed until now. Hori's face looked indifferent and swept her eyes. The familiar face of Yogu was filled with a sense of disgust in her heart. With a cold hum, her face finally became dignified again. Wang buzzing. With a buzzing sound that didn't know the source, the originally calm blue sky gradually became distorted at this moment. Vaguely, a strange barrier appeared on the top of the sky. At the same time, the energy between heaven and earth is also condensed at this moment. A vast and terrible energy breath comes from the sky above Hori's head. Come on. I'll see what's special about you today. The uninhibited laughter fell, Hori stepped on the void fiercely, and the space below collapsed instantly, while Hori rushed straight to the sky and up to the dome. Middle region. Somewhere in the bamboo forest like a fairyland on earth, a middle-aged man in a brocade robe suddenly changed his plain face at this moment. His solemn eyes suddenly looked to the west. In another secret place, a pair of scarlet bloodthirsty eyes, like the former, looked towards the due west until they closed slowly after a long time. The boundary of heaven. It's the western regions. Is it the guy from last time? In the bamboo forest, the middle-aged man frowned and worried. Alas! The sky on this continent is going to change. With a helpless sigh, the long low sigh is filled with a sense of loneliness, echoing endlessly in the empty bamboo forest. When Hori left this world, another night came. Until this time, Xiao Yang on the mountain woke up vaguely. At the moment Xiao Yang opened his eyes, what came into view was Jiuyu's old face. Jiuyu also looked at Xiao Yang. There was a smile on his old face, but there was a little regret. Because Xiao Yang just woke up, he didn't notice the strange look in the former's eyes. What's going on? What happened? After several days of coma, Xiao Yang, who just woke up at the moment, felt his head was a little dizzy, and even remembered vaguely what had happened before his coma. After a short memory, Xiao Yang quickly recalled that at that time, it seemed that Hori flew out of his body and attracted the energy of heaven and earth. That appearance was a sign of impending breakthrough. By the way, where's Hori? Isn't he breaking through? He's promoted to semi-emperor. Returning to his mind, Xiao Yang quickly got up and asked the Bonu beside him. In the voice of eager words, he could clearly detect Xiao Yang's concern for Huori. Speaking out, Xiao Yang didn't forget to look around at the sky for a week, but he was still helpless to frown in the end. Even his soul power didn't detect the slightest breath about Huori. Oh, don't look for it. He has left. Jiyu sighed and said to Xiao Yang. Leave. Bonold means that Huori left alone? Hearing Jiyu's words, Xiao Yang immediately frowned. In his opinion, Huori has just broken through to the half-emperor. With his strength, if he walks alone in the western region with mixed fish and dragons, he won't hit a wall on all sides. It won't work. Don't think about it. He's much safer than you think. Seeing Xiao Yang frown, Jiyu shakes his head again and interrupts Xiao Yang's mind to find someone. Hearing Jiyu's words, Xiao Yang's worried color on his face decreased by more than half. Then his eyes turned, but he spoke to Jiyu again. So, does Jiyu Laro know where he is now? Whether you know it or not, you don't have to ask more about it. If I have to give you an explanation, I can only say that he has his own chance with Yan. Isn't that what you expect? Jiyu Yushin took a deep breath, stood up and said slowly with his back to Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang raised his eyebrows and looked up at his back in the moonlight. He couldn't help but have a strange idea. In just a few words, the atmosphere between heaven and earth in which they lived became somewhat strange and depressed without intuition, which reminded Xiao Yang of the indifferent color in his eyes when he first saw Huori. While Xiao Yang frowned and thought, Jiyu turned around. His turbid old eyes stared at Xiao Yang and said, "They have their own way, and you just need to look at your own feet and take every step steadily. Maybe when you meet them again in the future, they will be proud of you." Seeing this rare solemn look on Guyo's face, Xiao Yang couldn't help but be a little stunned. Immediately, he nodded at Guyo blankly. "Remember, only your own strength can ensure your survival. All external forces can only be borrowed for a while. It's not your thing after all. Practice is endless. Never believe in the strongest, because there is no strongest, only stronger on this continent." Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang frowned. How can Jiyu hear this more and more strange? It seems that he is about to leave himself. "Old Bone, are you?" "Yes, as I just said to you, you are the only one on the road of cultivation. You can't always rely on my strength. Therefore, I think it's time to let your burning formula evolve again." Xiao Yang's words just blurted out, Guyo interrupted them again, and the meaning of his words is also self-evident. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang was stunned at first, and then the expression on his face suddenly changed, startled, and said, "Bone is old, is it difficult? Do you want me to refine your noumenon?" Hearing this, Guyo's body shook slightly, but finally he nodded solemnly and said, "It's my duty to give you the noumenon. You don't have to say anything about giving up or not giving up. I've already made a thunder punishment oath. If you don't want to, it's a big deal. I'll be ossified between heaven and earth." Old Bone. Hearing Jiyu's words, Xiao Yang immediately understood that he couldn't help refining the cold fire of Jiyu Ling, unless he wanted Jiyu to completely disappear between heaven and earth. In that way, Xiao Yang not only couldn't improve his strength, but even Jiyu's thoughts were emptied. "Jiyu Lao, if I refine the bone spirit cold fire, can you still be in the state of soul?" "It's impossible. I was born in Noumenon and died in Noumenon. After you refine the bone spirit cold fire, I will disappear. After all, it's impossible to have two masters at the same time. You should know that." Jiyu shook his head, looked at Xiao Yang blandly and explained. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang smiled bitterly. The net lotus demon fire in his body had just been taken away by its real owner. Naturally, there is no need to say more. It's not said that after being absorbed, the different cremation spirit will exist in the form of fire spirit. "Can't you be old?" Back to God, Xiao Yang seemed unwilling, frowned and asked Jiyu again. As far as Xiao Yang is concerned, even if he has to absorb different fire, it's a good thing for Xiao Yang if he can keep his bone quiet soul. But the result of the fact was not as expected by Xiao Yang. "Oh, that's okay, but in the final analysis, once the different fire master has any other thoughts, as long as the fire spirit is willing, it can be separated from the control of the different fire master at any time. That kind of dependent power won't have any effect at all, let alone let your burning formula evolve." Jiyu shakes his head. Although his idea is very good, this method is only applicable to others, and it has no effect on Xiao Yang, who practices burning formula. Then, is that the only way? Xiao Yang helplessly lowered his head. Although he tried his best, he finally got the noodles, but found that nothing could work. Hehe, don't care too much. It may be difficult for you to accept, but in my opinion, it's all destiny. After all, my duty is to point out the way for you and give you the body fire when the time is right. Seeing Xiao Yang's appearance, Jiu smiled. In his plain words, he revealed a sense of helplessness. Alas! On the top of the mountain, an old man and a young man both sighed. Jiu turned around and looked up at the distant night sky, feeling very melancholy in his heart. After a long time, Guyo seemed to think of something. He took back his eyes and looked at Xiao Yang, who was in a daze. With a flick of his fingers, a light poured into Xiao Yang's mind before Xiao Yang reacted. The sudden influx of a large amount of information in his mind suddenly changed Xiao Yang's face, which was in a daze. A severe pain suddenly came from his mind, and Xiao Yang's face became pale. Until after a good film was carved, Xiao Yang gradually sorted out the huge information in his mind, and his pale face gradually turned around. When Xiao Yang looked inside, in his mind, the first thing Xiao Yang saw was 3 golden characters. Ice elixir. This information is like a volume of pills. When his heart was frozen, Xiao Yang Meng raised his head, looked at the bone in front of him, and said in a puzzled tone, "Old bone, are you? Ice elixir, it's for you to devour different exergy. Don't forget that it's so easy to devour my body with your current strength. If you don't have the elixir as an auxiliary, with your strength, I'm afraid different fire will turn into ashes in an instant." Seeing the surprised look on Xiao Yang's face, Jiu looked at Xiao Yang with a joking face and said with a light smile. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang looked a little stunned on his face, which reminded him that he is now in Yuanwu mainland. The strange fire here is countless times stronger than the fighting spirit in the mainland. Can he swallow it at will? Only the pill can increase Xiao Yang's probability of swallowing the strange fire. Thinking of this, Xiao Yang couldn't help but recall the scene when he swallowed the fire in the heart of the green lotus for the first time. At that time, it seemed that it was the elixir refined by the old medicine that saved Xiao Yang a lot of pain when swallowing different fire, and increased the success rate of swallowing different fire for Xiao Yang at the same time. Now, the scene very similar to that of that year appears again in front of Xiao Yang. Taking back his eyes, Xiao Yang slowly closed his eyes and enjoyed the information he had just got. Ice elixir, a third-order elixir, is located in the third-order middle grade. Its refining difficulty is quite difficult among all the third-order elixirs. Of course, just because it is difficult to refine, it can really reflect its value. After all, ice elixir can compete with different fire. At the thought of a third-order pill that could compete with the strange fire and even suppress it, Xiao Yang was shocked. Tut tut, what a surprise. This ice elixir can suppress the bone spirit cold fire. After the good film was carved, Xiao Yang opened his eyes again and exclaimed, "Cut, don't place all your hopes on this ice elixir. Although this elixir can suppress my body, what it relies on is not the power of the elixir itself, but the ice spirit cold liquid." When Xiao Yang exclaimed, Guyo said the most important part of the ice elixir. Yes, it's Bingling cold liquid. Speaking of Bingling cold liquid, it is indeed an extremely scarce treasure on the mainland. Its precious degree is no less than the black iron of the flame meteorite. In addition, it is a necessity for refining many high-level pills. Even many 8th-level pills cannot lack Bingling cold liquid as the main material. Therefore, whenever Bingling cold liquid is discovered on the mainland, it will cause a bloodbath, and it has a price without a market in the auction market. Of course, these can only say the treasure degree of Bingling cold liquid, and its role is the bane of all flames. Bingling cold liquid comes from Bingling cold spring. Bingling cold spring has an extremely terrible power of yin and cold. Where it is located, the whole world will turn into a 9 hell. People within 10,000 miles can't step into it, and animals can't survive. Even semi-imperial warcraft is difficult to get close to. If different fire has the most terrible high temperature in the world, then Bingling cold spring has the coldest extreme temperature in the world. Under that terrible low temperature, even the void space will be frozen and collapse. Therefore, after the collision between different fire and Bingling cold liquid, the two extremely opposite temperature differences will reduce their forces and even finally be in equilibrium. This is the role of Bingling pill. Of course, Bone Spirit Cold Fire is famous for its accompanying ice sealing effect, but this is ignored by Bone Yu. Xiao Yang, who has the protection of different fire, can ignore the freezing effect of Bone Spirit Cold Fire. Therefore, as long as he can suppress the violent temperature of Bone Spirit Cold Fire, the rest only depends on Xiao Yang's personal nature. When Xiao Yang finished reading the whole volume of Danfang, he couldn't help but cough violently, and the expression on his face became ugly. Looking at the whole volume of Danfang, in addition to the Bingling cold liquid described in Guyo's mouth, looking at other alchemy materials, Xiao Yang couldn't help but burst out a mouthful of old blood at a glance. There are more than 100 kinds of materials for the ice elixir. Although he can collect most of them, the other 4 kinds make Xiao Yang want to cry without tears. Apart from Bingling cold liquid, the other 4 kinds are also extremely precious alchemy herbs. Xiao Yang believes that even if he has lost his fortune with his current wealth, he can only scrape together 3 kinds. As for the remaining one, including Bingling cold liquid, Xiao Yang can only sigh. Alas! With a helpless wry smile, Xiao Yang's eyebrows could not help twisting into a ball. Unexpectedly, he was invisible and had become almost impoverished. After exchanging 2 imperial elixirs for that piece of Yangjing last time, there are only 5 local elixirs left on Xiao Yang. This may be a lot for ordinary semi-imperial strong people, but for Xiao Yang, it is simply not enough to make up for his consumption. It seems that it's time to refine some imperial pills, but at the same time, Xiao Yang also wanted to take this opportunity to practice his medicine refining skills. After all, compared with other second-order herbalists, Xiao Yang only refined imperial pill once. In contrast, Xiao Yang is weaker than other second-order herbalists in any aspect. Therefore, when he entered the Shaolin Mountains this time, Xiao Yang, on the one hand, advanced towards the western wasteland. On the other hand, cultivating medicine refining is particularly important for Xiao Yang in this process. After stretching his eyebrows, Xiao Yang nodded slightly, and immediately sat cross-legged again. His hands made a practice knot. The burning determination skill in his body also worked at the moment. Between heaven and earth, strands of heaven and earth energy gradually gathered towards Xiao Yang. Jiyu Yuning looked at Xiao Yang, who was in the state of cultivation again in front of him, gave a deep breath, then moved and turned into a white light. In a flash, he disappeared into Xiao Yang's body. Several wolf howls came from time to time in the dark night. In the dark mountain forest, there was a slight sound of rustling, and the energy hurricane roared continuously on the top of the mountain. This night, not quiet. Next day, the short and long night passed quietly. When the light of the last star in the western sky disappeared, a white light appeared on the ground at the end of the line of sight in the east. The white light seems dim, but it makes the darkness compromise. The more intense the white light is, the darkness dissipates. Finally, a fiery red sun seems to have just woke up from a deep sleep, rising slowly with a sense of fatigue. Feeling the warm temperature from his back, Xiao Yang woke up slowly in the cultivation state. One night's cultivation did not make Xiao Yang feel a little tired. On the contrary, it made Xiao Yang more energetic. Standing up, Xiao Yang conveniently pulled up the Xian heavy ruler inserted in the stone crack. With the stone chips splashing, Xiao Yang carried the heavy ruler, gently pointed the stone peak with his toes, and jumped forward slightly. He was wearing a black robe and was agitated in the wind. In a twinkling, Xiao Yang had appeared in the void hundreds of feet away. On his way, Xiao Yang did not forget to use his soul power to search the mountains and forests below. This time, in addition to trying his luck to find Yangjing, he was more for some medicinal materials used to refine imperial pills. Judging from the medicinal materials left in Xiao Yang's current Naji, there are only a few that can be used to refine imperial elixir. With Xiao Yang's current refining skills, I'm afraid these medicinal materials are not enough for Xiao Yang to refine an imperial elixir. Therefore, he must collect more medicinal materials. Only in repeated failures can Xiao Yang get more experience to increase his success rate in refining imperial pill. Although such a search was not easy, after several wars, Xiao Yang finally got several kinds of herbs he needed. On the top of a mountain somewhere, Xiao Yang looked at the endless mountains in the west direction. After a month's journey, Xiao Yang was about to reach the depths of Shaolin Mountains. Although he hasn't entered there yet, in the exploration of Xiao Yang's soul power at the moment, he has clearly noticed several strong breath, which can't help but make Xiao Yang's face show a dignified color. If the masters of those breath guess well, they are all warcraft at the level of 9 stars and half emperors. Tut tut. The Shaolin Mountains are really hidden dragons and crouching tigers. I don't know how long these warcraft have existed. Their cultivation has reached such a level. It's hard to imagine what will happen in the hinterland of the Shaolin Mountains. Xiao Yang stared at the direction of several breath in front of him, and couldn't help but tut in his mouth. While Xiao Yang perceives the existence of those people, the other party is also clearly aware of Xiao Yang's exploration. Human beings. Go back where you come from. Don't disturb our cleaning and repair. This is not a place where you can set foot at will. Deep in the mountains, the faint voice of the words came with an echo, and finally fell into Xiao Yang's ears. The power contained in the words made Xiao Yang frown. It seems to see Xiao Yang's strength. Therefore, the speaker's attitude is not overbearing and plain, but persuades Xiao Yang to take the initiative to leave. Hearing the meaning of the words, Xiao Yang smiled lightly, immediately arched his hands in those directions and said with a smile, "I'm just passing by your precious land. I want to borrow away. If there's any disturbance, please forgive me. Boy, I don't think it's easy for you to cultivate, and I don't want to kill you. I advise you to turn back and exit the Shaolin Mountains. As for crossing the road, you'd better take a detour, otherwise, don't blame us for bullying the small." This time, the bland voice of words became a little fierce, which also revealed a sense of hegemony. However, Xiao Yang still had a bland face, the smile at the corners of his mouth gradually disappeared, and a firm look appeared on his beautiful face. Although there are 9 stars and a half emperors on the opposite side, he has to borrow this road. Now the time has not come, he doesn't want to run into the 4 main gates so easily. Therefore, if he wants to go to the western wasteland, he has to go through the road of Shaolin Mountain no matter how. Taking back his eyes, Xiao Yang sat down with a dull face, waved it casually, and a red medicine tripod appeared in front of Xiao Yang. It's the beast tripod. In order not to cause too much trouble for himself, Xiao Yang had to use the beast tripod for the time being. After all, the attraction of the Luo Tiantian tripod as the second largest tripod in the list is too terrible. If Xiao Yang really shows the Luo Tianding, once it is discovered, it is not only the Shaolin Mountains, but also the whole western region. With a flick of his finger, a gorgeous different fire was shot into the medicine tripod. With a puff, the different fire rose, and the temperature in the medicine tripod also increased. After finishing these, Xiao Yang kept moving in his hand. With a wave of his big hand, the light between his fingers flickered, and the medicinal materials containing a strong smell of medicine swept into the void. Xiao Yang played with his fingers. Each medicinal material seemed to have received an order. He quickly put it into the medicine tripod in front of Xiao Yang. With the refining of different fire, the medicine power was also refined by cultivation. In the twinkling of an eye, Xiao Yang has been sitting on the upper wall of the mountain for half a month. During this half-month, the medicinal materials in Xiao Yang medicine tripod have been destroyed no less than 5 times, and those destroyed medicinal materials are usually valuable and marketable in the outside world. 5 times in a row, Xiao Yang could not bear to feel heartache when he saw that the herbs in his medicine tripod were swallowed up by different fire. Except that some of them were brought by him from the herbalist guild in the wild ancient city, most of them were brought by him in the Shaolin Mountains. Now they are turned into ashes by different fire. No matter who it is, will feel heartache for it. Of course, heartache goes back to heartache, but Xiao Yang has also gained a lot of experience in repeated failures. These experiences can ensure that Xiao Yang can greatly reduce the failure rate of refining medicine in the process of refining medicine in the future. Although this premise is that Xiao Yang destroys a lot of medicinal materials, the benefits Xiao Yang gets from it are lifelong benefits. After nearly 2 months of hard work, Xiao Yang finally succeeded in attracting Dan Lei twice. The appearance of 2 times of Dan Lei gave Xiao Yang greater confidence in the refining of Imperial Dan medicine. With the help of 2 times of Dan Lei, Bei Wang's strength was improved again. Although the improvement was not great, it was very gratifying in Xiao Yang's view. Finally, Xiao Yang stayed in the periphery of Shaolin Mountains for half a year. In this half a year, Xiao Yang not only recovered his fighting spirit, but also devoted himself to refining medicine. Huang Tian lives up to those who have a heart. After 6 months of honing, Xiao Yang has nearly 70% confidence in the refining success rate of Imperial Pill. It is very proud of Xiao Yang among the same level of pharmacists. While Xiao Yang's medicine refining skills were improving wildly, his 5-star and half-emperor strength was also completely consolidated. It was like a step away from the middle of the 5-star and half-emperor. There was a good harvest of medicine refining skills and strength, which was undoubtedly the happiest thing for Xiao Yang in the past 6 months. As for the North King, after 8 times of Dan Lei's baptism, the strength of the North King has reached the peak in the later stage of the 9-star and half-emperor, which is almost the same as the real fighting emperor level. I just don't know what kind of scene it will be if the North King really steps on the fighting emperor level one day. Will it lead to thunder robbery like a living man? Of course, before everything happened, Xiao Yang naturally didn't know about it. After a night's rest, Xiao Yang slowly withdrew from his cultivation state in the morning. After half a year, there was nothing left on Xiao Yang's face. If there was, it would be a more attractive mature charm. With a light breath, Xiao Yan got up. With the sound of bone collision, Xiao Yang slowly looked up and looked at the mountains in the distance again. He smiled at the corners of his mouth, moved his body, and flew away towards the west. This video will end here.